I just really liked this episode and I thought it was cool.
And this is the last chance to have a fun theory before the season ends.
I don't trust any of them dying via stab because I feel like they can all cast Cure Wounds.
Greetings, Palaxians. Today on the Bounty Board, we're talking about Agatha All Along, Episode 7. Lilia Calderu's visions and the Salem Seven's deaths. So kick up that warp drive and let's punch it.
Welcome back to the Guardians of the Palaxy podcast. My name is Whitney Van Lanningham, and I'm here today with two of my very best friends, the members of my coven, if you will, Tommy Bechtold and Brett Turley. What is going on, pals?
Hi.
Hey, Whitney.
Hi.
Hey, Tommy.
I'm glad that you're over there just casting spells.
I'm going to just cut random bits of this episode throughout the podcast.
Yeah.
So it's going to be completely out of order.
I like it. That's not confusing
that's
to me at
great.
all.
Everyone's going to love that.
Everyone is going to love that. They're just going to hear me say something really weird out of nowhere, and it's going to be great.
And I for sure didn't complain about that during watching this last episode of Agatha and went, this is too confusing for me. I just watched it and trusted the process.
I really enjoyed the format of this episode. When I was watching it, I just wished that I was less of a huge fucking dork and that I hadn't already gone through and rewatched all of those because I was like, I have to figure out the puzzle. What else is she trying to say? So like, that's our job. So we do that.
Right.
But I feel like when I watched all of them back to back to back, I was just like, bro, I wish that I was like a person who wasn't so insane that I rewound it already.
I hate that this is my burden on
This
this
is
world.
my curse and my burden.
Yes.
This is my gift, my curse.
Talk about 2 for 2, Jack Schaefer. I mean, I feel like the last 2 episodes of this show have to seal it for you. Like,
Bangers.
no delusions here. The WandaVision and Agatha, like that is one subsection of the MCU and Marvel Studios TV that has just been incredible. Like, what a run. Like, I can't say
out
enough.
of the park. And it's like, it's not just good MCU storytelling, it's good television storytelling.
Absolutely.
Like, they're both just really good TV shows.
I did a talk back on Screen Crush the other day, and I was saying, like, my mom has like 3 different times while I've been at her house watching this show. I don't live with my mom, but I do spend a lot of time there because I'm a good son. She's been like, what's this? Is this the witch show? And I'm like, yeah. And she'll sit down and just watch without context. She's like,
yeah.
And her feedback is always, man, Catherine Hahn is an incredible actress. And man, Patti LuPone, why is she in this? That's crazy.
Why is she in this?
And I'm like, Mom, that's the magic of Marvel's bank accounts is they can get anybody. Even
They
the
can
people
get
you'd
anyone they
never
want. They can even get a dead Robert Downey Jr. to come back as an entirely different character.
Well, I think we all know why Patti LuPone signed up now.
Yeah.
Oh,
what a
because this is
spectacular
amazing.
script.
And just her acting in this episode was so incredible. The choices that she made and the way that she portrayed a person who is A, slowly losing their mind, and B, regaining their memories and losing them at the same time.
Yeah.
And then C, it's also her experiencing all of the different stages of grief until she finally finds the acceptance of her own death.
Right.
And then it's like, well, fuck. Like, now she's gone. God damn it. She just became self-actualized.
Well, ain't that always the way? But
Death with an asterisk, though.
I got it.
because-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
death was an asterisk because in the MCU, nobody ever really dies. We got confirmation that Wanda is probably most likely
Right.
still
Oh, that
alive
was
in this
great.
episode.
Yeah.
Is Wanda really dead? Yes. No. Maybe.
Maybe. I don't know.
The reason I don't trust the death of Alice, Patti LuPone's character, and Mrs. Hart dying would be a bit of a Barb situation from Stranger Things season 1. Like if they killed her and kept her dead, it would be a bit of a like, oh, wait a second. I have this suspicious feeling that once they complete the road, either her death won't have been like permanent or there'll be some sort of like time reversal on her or whatever. I don't know. It's weird because I have different feelings about all 3 of the Coven deaths that have happened so far, like ranging on like which ones I think will stick and which ones I don't know will stick. Like I definitely feel like Alice, hers might stick. Like it'd be hard to justify her coming back. But.
Yeah, that looked definitely extra dead for sure. Brett mentioned something that I thought was interesting earlier in regard to Lilia's prophecies is Brett was saying to me, well, if she doesn't come back from the dead, how does she know to tell Agatha to duck when Rio calls her a coward? And so the implications of that are either she comes back and she does see that moment and she's warning Agatha, or it means that she can just see prophecies for people that have absolutely nothing to do with her, which is also very cool. And I know that it implies too, like with her past, she saw that like her whole village was going to die. She saw that her teacher was going to die because that involved her, you know? I don't know if she can just see for like only people that don't involve her, because same with Teen. Like Teen eventually involved her. So I don't know if she could see them because they were like part of her story, or if she could see it just because she can see random flashes of anybody's life.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like she definitely saw William Kaplan's death when she read his palm, but also Billy Maximoff's like resurrection.
Yeah, rebirth.
That's why she created that sigil. So it's like, I mean, she's obviously alive for that, but she does have some of her clairvoyance clearly is the moment of people's deaths, right? Like, and perhaps, you know, much like, you know, Doctor Strange sees thousands of outcomes. Perhaps there's like a million different ways that Agatha gets like cut in half when Rio says you're a coward or whatever, and then
seriously, and so she's just like, this is the only way I've seen every single multiverse and every single outcome, and there's only one in which you duck when she says coward, and you gotta do it.
This episode is hard to do a like let's talk through the episode because it's told out of sequence, but
it's told completely not non-linearly.
I think there are some major moments. One, the conversation between Lilia and Jen are walking, and there's like, you know, that kind of gets cut throughout the whole episode, but they have like some pretty significant moments in that little upside down under the road, which is, I guess, a subway tunnel or something like that.
Yeah, so if you remember from the first episode, or maybe it was the second episode, one of the first two, Mrs. Hart is like, oh, I'm so surprised that this is down here. The only thing I thought we would see is the remnants of Westview's like public transportation system. Yeah. So I think that that's why. And I think that that's really funny because it implies that there's Westview, then there's the Witches Road, and then there's the subway. Like you got to pass, you got to take an escalator down through the Witches Road just to take the fucking subway to work.
You're constantly like getting on the subway and you're like, this is such a weird trip. Like what
a bizarre.
What's happening here?
The subway is weird, but it's especially weird in Westview. Yeah. Why?
Oh my goodness. I love it. But I like the animal forms of the Salem 7 kind of all showing up in one place was really cool. And obviously the big reveal that had, you know, thanks a lot, Funko, had been ruined for many people that take spoilers in. We get that Rio Vidal is death.
She's death.
A major
and
character.
Agatha likes bad boys.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that was with like Agatha being like, yeah, I've been knowingly keeping this insanely powerful,
this crazy powerful
with
secret
us the entire time.
The entire time. And like, what the fuck? Yes. First of all, Agatha is not a girl's girl. Let's just get that straight.
She's not a girl's girl.
Not a girl's girl.
And I'm sick of it.
Death might be a girl's girl. The word is still out. You know, jury's still out. We'll figure that one. Yeah. But oh my God, no, that part truly is so nuts. And the other part that I think is nuts about that little exchange that I personally loved, this was the most back-to-back, like wall-to-wall, outright, like overt gay jokes from that I've ever seen in the MCU. Like this is so many just queer jokes back-to-back. She's just like, if you want a straight answer, ask a straight woman. And then she's like, your mother was my ex.
Right.
Best friend. and then he's like, ooh, I can be the queer, I forget what it was.
Queerant.
Oh yeah, I can be the query. Yeah. And like it's so fucking funny that I love that like we're finally at a place in like Disney and the MCU where they're not don't say gaying. They're just straight up throwing like 3 fucking back-to-back jokes in there for homos like me. And I like that.
But I think, Whitney, yes. And very valid. But I also think like this show, coming from the straight perspective, does the least condescending portrayal of gay characters that Marvel has done yet, in terms of just like, yes, Teen has been unapologetically gay from the beginning, from like the first episode when he gets a call from his boyfriend. He's
making out. He's calling his bar mitzvah extra. He is a sweet gay witch, and we love him.
Feels to me like more authentically told stories on a freaking witches coven show. Like, it's like, this is how easy it is to be inclusive.
I've seen a lot of y'all out there saying that the part that sucks is that we got to see Billy get like a little gay smooch before we see Agatha and Rio get a gay smooch. And they were saying, well, that's shitty because that's, you know, not fair to women, that we are more accepting of gay men in media than we are of gay women. And to that I say, do you know any gay women? Because we will yearn and pine before we get a kiss. I'm sorry. But like when I have a crush on a girl, I am yearning. I am in the DMs. I am flirting for months before I have the balls to make out.
Yearn Pine 2024. That's my ticket.
Yearn Pine 2024, baby. You know me, baby. I'm just here to yearn till the urn.
We're cooking now, baby. We're cooking
now. We're cooking with gas. So what I want to talk about, germs and gents, is I really loved a lot of the conversations. You brought this up a little bit ago, Tommy, like the conversations that Jen and Lilia were having in like the little underground tunnels. I thought it was a very cool portrayal of like an old person, specifically an older woman who is going through some memory loss problems. And this is a younger woman who's not patronizing her, not treating her like she's crazy, and not over taking care of her and being too protective and not letting her be her own person anymore. She's like, oh, okay, so you had this vision. So what did it mean in your past? How were you able to stop it? What are we doing? What's going on? When Agatha starts being a dick to her, she's like, back off, Agatha. Lily is having a hard day.
Right.
She really like takes care of her and protects her in a way that doesn't remove her autonomy and doesn't like remove her independence and like who she is as a person. And I think that it's a really cool thing to see, because a lot of the time in our culture, especially with older women, but also just old people in general, we kind of have a tendency to write them off as soon as they reach a certain age.
100%.
You throw grandma and grandpa in the nursing home and you kind of just forget about them. So many times, like, you know, the old crazy lady is like the butt of the joke.
Sure.
You don't always take them seriously. You kind of get to a point where you're like, no, you have to wear the grippy socks or else you're going to fall. And if you take off the grippy socks, I'm sorry that you are my elder, but I know better than you now. And I need to take care of you. And it robs older people of like so much of their autonomy and so much of like who they are when you either baby them and coddle them, or when you infantilize them and treat them like they're old or crazy or like there's something wrong with them. So I thought that it was just like really cool that she actually took the time to take her seriously, to listen to her. She knew that she was going through something. She knew that it was probably harder on Lilia than it was for her to experience Lilia going through it. And she just wanted to help. She just wanted to be a homie. She just wanted to be cool. It's really sad when you get older, it especially can feel lonelier and you can feel forgotten, because at a certain point you reach an age where nobody that you knew are around anymore. You reach a certain age where you might be the last of your brothers and sisters. Your parents might be dead and you might be the last person in your family, and you don't have anyone else because you outlived everyone.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Lilia has gone through for the last hundreds of years of her life. And it's what held her back, and it's what made her isolate so much.
Sure.
Sorry I'm talking so much. I just really liked this episode and I thought it was cool.
We were letting you cook there, and I agree with what you said. I think that is important. One of the things I try to be cognizant of is seeing all people. There is a certain age where men and women especially become invisible to younger people. Like they become only visible when you need them or when you're burdened by them in your mind, and you miss out on all these life experiences. And I remember being an asshole 20-year-old and wanting nothing to do with my older relatives because I wanted to do whatever. And you hopefully you get to a certain age, and now I'm on the older side. And it's like when she said I'm a forgotten woman. It's like, like, that just nails on the head. And she's a freaking witch. It's like, you're a witch that's forgotten. I thought that the empathy that we've seen shine through in Sashiro Zameda's character, Jen, like, she's really fascinating to me because she's almost a little like Steve Harrington from the season 1 of Stranger Things. I hate to invoke that again, but it's like, she's like, she's supposed to be this asshole that, like, you know, runs this grift business. She's mean to everyone at first glance. Like, her first encounter with every person in the coven is kind of rude. But she's also the, like, one person that will always try to do the right thing, has consistently tried to take care of everyone when she could, as far as we know. But the only one, like, had no duplicitousness in any of her actions. There's more to be explored about how friend groups treat each other in this show about witches. It's like, there's a lot to be explored in, like, the way that big personalities get along with each other in a vacuum.
God, their group chat must be next level.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The Witches Road group chat has to be as unhinged, if not more unhinged than Palaxy.
It's just it's Mrs. Hart not knowing how to send memes. So she's just
knowing how to send memes.
She's just sending pictures with the caption underneath, like sending an extra caption. She's like, put this all together as a meme. I love it.
Agatha has the chat permanently on Do Not Disturb, so she only chimes in when she needs to talk about something.
Oh, yeah. Everyone in the chat will, out of pure fear, respond immediately if she does respond.
Immediately when she texts, yeah.
Holy shit. Agatha just responded. We gotta, like, everyone's got to ha-ha it, thumbs up it, or question. I can't believe it.
Speaking of Jen, what do you think the future of her in the MCU is going to look like? Is she going to die in the next few episodes? It does seem like Lilia was sort of like setting her up as this high priestess. And like MT and I have talked a little bit about like the fact that she's on the Midnight Suns. It's for like 2 comics, but like she's a member of the Midnight Suns in the comics. Is this character going to be a character that they use to do more supernatural stuff in the MCU with?
It feels as though the 3 that are going to emerge out of this are going to be Rio, Billy Maximoff, and Agatha. Whether everybody comes back in the end, then that would obviously open the door for any of them. But if these deaths stick, then I almost feel like she's going to have to die in the finale.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the 3 of them emerging out into the Earth 616 and having a future.
I'm still waiting for the shot of her crawling out of the Earth. I think the question really is, do you think all these witches are going to be revived at the end or not, right?
I kind of do, because it's the MCU. But Jack Schaefer did say in an interview that Alice is like dead. But that could be misdirection. She could be Garfielding.
Well, anything said in season, I don't know.
I do not trust a single fucking death in the MCU.
No, never.
Nobody stays dead. So far,
fucking
it's like
Robert Downey Jr. didn't even stay dead.
Robert Downey Jr. didn't even stay dead.
They broke that glass in case of emergency less than 5 years after it happened.
Yeah.
They were like,
holy shit.
We got to bring him back. And quite frankly, Chris Evans, you're next.
Yeah.
Human Torch wasn't good enough.
Get on deck. Be on deck for Cap.
Be ready. ABC. Always be captaining.
Where I sort of land on whether the witches are coming back or not, I'm kind of split. I think a good argument for them not being resurrected is also Lilia too, right? Because this whole episode was sort of about her transformation, right? The tower reversed was this big transformation. And we saw in her death that she was sort of reborn in her younger self. So if the other witches are also brought back to life, does it remove sort of the message of this episode? And this episode's really, really strong. And I don't know if you want to like do a disservice to this episode itself.
I guess I could almost see it might not be a all for one and one.
We brought everyone back except Patty LaPone.
What if they don't bring anyone back except for Mrs. Hart because she's a sweet baby and didn't deserve to get barbed?
Like that could be a death thing. Like that could be a Rio Vidal like decision where she's like, this death wasn't earned or something. And
she was just like, fuck it, I like Mrs. Hart.
Death isn't as satiated by like killing a sweet old lady.
So I think the other lingering question from this episode is, are all of the Salem 7 dead? And like what happened there?
Yeah, well, we technically did only see 5 bodies get pierced by swords. Because when they all fell, you only heard 5 like slice sounds as they like hit the swords. You see them too.
It's only 5
you see them, but in the background, you see like falling things that could be bodies.
A feather. There's a
feathers,
feather, which might imply that the one turned into a birdie.
A bird. Yeah, because the birdie ones, there's an owl and a raven.
Brett turned into a drunk girl for a minute there. He was just flying away. When you have an ethereal or demonic, rather, coven of like kind of feral witches, as they said, I don't trust any of them dying via stab because I feel like they can come back. They can cast cure wounds and get back on the schneid right away. But anyway, I mean, I feel like if anything, Lilia had accepted her death and like is the only one that like truly almost like not wanted to die, but was just like, this is how this has to go. The other 7 are kind of like zombie witches, basically. I feel like they're just going to pull themselves up off the swords and be like Rambo, lighting each other's wounds on fire to seal them and like back up out on the road. So maybe we lose one of the Salem 7 or 2, but you know, much like Menudo or the Temptations, I feel like as long as you got one in the group, it's always going to be the Salem 7.
It did feel like that was one of the most tacked on aspects of this episode.
Sure.
Was just like, obviously, I think giving Lilia, especially since we're talking about like older women don't get like the spotlight, right? Giving her this big action movie moment where she's able to like essentially destroy the primary villain is like very cool, but we haven't really seen them do anything other than turn into bees. And
I mean,
also
if anything, you're like almost more like Rio's the villain of this season.
I think she is. Yeah.
She's waiting. Yeah. You're waiting Rio for Agatha to get her magic back so they can fight to the death or whatever. And like the Salem 7 feel a little more like a MacGuffin or almost like a
mislead. Yeah,
a mislead.
Yeah, they're just like a B plot villain. They're not the A plot villain.
When we were watching it, Whitney turned to me though, and she was like, "Did she really need to close the door behind them and sacrifice herself to stop them?"
I was kind of like, couldn't she have just gotten in and closed the door? Like, did she have to stay behind?
Her remembering getting her full memories back momentarily, like was like, this is how this is supposed to go. Which is like, you know, if that were me, I'd be like, or we fucking change the future. I don't know.
Yeah.
I hop in this Iron Maiden.
Or I branch the fucking timeline and I just hop on over because I don't want to die.
It did seem like she had a uniquely long amount of time to get in that Iron Maiden with the rest of them, but I don't know.
She could have done it, I think, but she would have branched the timeline and
then we'd have
the
to have
TVA
Loki
that no longer exists would have gotten really mad.
Yeah.
And also, what were they doing just like walking around the tunnels anyways? Like they were just Salem 7.
We're going underground, baby.
They're like, oh, no one's up here. We gotta go
under.
How does the TVA handle witchcraft? Like they had to have been watching thousands of years of witchcraft, being like, what the fuck?
What the fucking shit? Why is that one an owl? How do we deal with it if the owl branches a timeline?
Oh, they have to prune animals. That's so sad.
No. Oh,
that's
so
sad.
The lizard branched the timeline.
No, R.I.P.
Hey pals, we're back from the future, like Marty McFly and Doc Brown.
Doc Brown, baby,
and
let's
Lilia,
go. And Lilia.
Yeah. Before we put this out, there was an interesting Variety article, and we had a few more thoughts about the episode that we wanted to talk about. So we're tagging this on to our recording yesterday.
Yeah, and we're going to contradict some of the things we said yesterday, not unlike a incorrect soothsayer, which I guess we were yesterday.
Yeah. I'm sure the comments were already written that was like, actually, if there's the Variety article that you guys haven't.
I bet there's 10 comments already that are like, you bitches didn't read the Variety article. Yeah. No, we did, and we're sorry. We're sorry we recorded.
It wasn't out at the time.
It wasn't out at the time. We did our best, but we want to
also. I want to apologize for this episode being a little bit late. I had jury duty all week, and it has been thrown a wrench in our schedule.
Brett actually got chosen as a juror. He was in the courtroom.
Always do.
He is such a good American citizen. We support jury duty here in this house.
Anyways. Agatha momentum. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this Variety article, obviously. Basically, when Jack Schaefer was asked, are Lilia, Alice, and Mrs. Hart really dead? She said, this is a show about death. We actually have the character death in our show. Personally, I feel like when a person dies, you can still talk to them and feel them, and they can still be in your lives, but death is immutable. It is permanent. With this show, we wanted to pay respects to that. So this is a more earnest and grave conversation about death than maybe you would find in another superhero project. And then when asked if the Salem 7 are dead, she said, yes, the Salem 7 are dead. They're off the board of our show. Lilia has saved everybody.
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts about all of that. Let's talk about, first and foremost, that our main witches are dead. So Mrs. Hart, Alice, and Lilia, gonzo. They are off the board, apparently. So that means that they will obviously not be coming back. And this is really interesting to me because, as I said, I'm sure earlier in this episode, the MCU never really kills anyone. They never let anyone stay dead. So it's very, very interesting to me that we do finally have a show with a lot of like final moments for characters in a lot of MCU films. I mean, so far it's really only been Black Widow who hasn't somehow resurrected herself. I think that Jack Schaefer said, "Hey, I'm giving you lesbians, but the catch is they have to die." It's like a real monkey's paw situation with lesbians. And
that's the rule for putting lesbians in any form of television, though. That's not a Jack Schaefer rule. That is a standards and practices homophobia rule.
And I hate it.
Kill your gays.
Let the lesbians live happily ever after. Yep. I'm really hoping that we get at least a little Rio Agatha smooch, because I think that the surviving lesbians deserve to be happy.
If it's a smooch, I think it's a breakup smooch.
Kill me, not a divorce smooch. Hate those. Absolutely hate those. I've never been divorced, but you're actually my first. Still time. You're my first husband, believe it or not. And my only husband. But yeah, I do think that it's just really, really interesting that this is probably, I mean, it's obvious. There have been characters, of course, who have died in MCU films. Usually when someone dies in the MCU, that death is usually a catalyst for like the next thing. So like, for example, after Quicksilver dies, Wanda gets real depressed and she starts going through some shit. Vision dies. She goes absolutely bananas and builds an entire hex around Westview where she wanted to live with her robot husband once the Infinity War was over. Deaths are usually like a cause for something else. They're a vehicle to get you to the next movie. They're a vehicle to get you to the character's next motivation. And in this, it does seem like these characters are dead and that's the impact. It's not setting up something in the future. It's not going to be like, oh, and Alice's ghost is back in, the Thunderbolts or whatever the fuck, like it's not gonna be like that. And I think that is a lot more impactful.
I mean, obviously I think a lot of these characters, like, they don't really have a place in MCU proper anyways, because like
they witches. They have their own shit going on. They're busy ladies.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like, do we really see Kitty Foreman joining up with getting that Thanos gauntlet with the rest of the A-Force?
Yes, I do. I 100% see Kitty Foreman on she's the one who Thanos punched in the face instead of Captain Marvel, and she didn't move a muscle. Yeah. Mrs. Hart is the strongest among us.
Yeah. I don't think like seeing them again in the future of the MCU was ever really on the board outside of like within this own like WandaVision saga. All of the deaths this season have really felt like they were like kind of half earned, a little anticlimactic and a little bit like, well, if we're doing like this Wizard of Oz thing, does that mean that like everyone's coming back at the end? Is Agatha going to learn her lesson and restore everyone back to life? And I think a lot of people are bummed that isn't the direction of the show currently. Yeah. I don't know where I personally stand on it. I think we just have to see what they end up doing.
Yeah, it really is all about like waiting and seeing, because there have been a lot of directions that this show has gone in that I didn't expect. And for the most part, I like the things that I didn't expect. I've liked being surprised by certain like plot lines in certain directions so far. So I do agree that we need to kind of like see how it plays out exactly. But I also agree that for me, Mrs. Hart's death, Tommy was talking about this earlier. Mrs. Hart's death really did feel like a Barb from Stranger Things, where it was like, oh, she just gets killed off in the first 5 minutes. And that kind of sucked. Like it wasn't a super fulfilling death.
And like all of Alice's fans are like a little upset that like, oh, she finally got her curse lifted and then she died like 20 minutes later.
I know. Yeah. And that definitely sucks, because it's like she still had like a lot more life to live. And with Lilia, I do think that Lilia's death was the only one out of the 3 so far that was fully earned.
Yeah, it was totally earned. But at the same time, there's that weird, like, once again, there's that weird asterisk over it. That's like, well, technically because her conscience slides throughout her history anyways, she was just kind of reborn.
Yeah.
She like never really died.
Yeah, she just kind of came back in the afterlife and was hanging out with her teacher as a little girl again. So that's why I'm kind of like, oh, Lilia asterisk. I respect what Jac Schaeffer said, but I'm also like, there's a little time. There's a time slip in there somewhere.
And I think in regards to like the Salem 7, right? Where they didn't really do anything.
Dude, I'm bummed. That's the thing that I have a big opinion on from this article, that I'm very bummed out that this is the last that we saw of the Salem 7. Because
I think the way that it's worded, I still think 2 survived.
I think that 2 survived too, because the feathers in the background, and 2 of them can turn into birds. Why wouldn't they just fly away?
One of them turns into bees and the other one turns into a bird. Yeah.
The birds and the bees, baby. Let's go.
The birds and the bees are going to get you.
The birds and the bees, they get you every time. Yeah, I'm really bummed out about that, because I felt like they were good little like B-plot villains. I knew that they weren't ever like the A-plot villain, because that's obviously Rio, and the show is also about a villain, which is Agatha. So we've got like the main villain situation covered here. I knew that they were always going to be just like a B-plot, but there's so much more that a B-plot. There's just so much more that I really want to know about them. I have so many questions. For example, okay, we know that they can like turn into animals. That's very fucking cool. We know that they wear those little cute lace dresses with the, the face coverings and everything. I
Cute's
think
not a word I would use, but yeah.
I think it's cute. I think that it's cottagecore adorbs. But I want to know what their actual powers are. Like, what are their other powers besides turning into animals? Because they are clearly very powerful witches. They've spent their entire lives waiting for this moment to finally kill Agatha. And I just feel like we barely got to know them at all. Like we never got, I mean, certainly they're nameless and faceless, somewhat faceless. I just don't feel like I learned enough about this villain. They were scary, but I'm not sure at this point what the point of them was. It just kind of was like a ticking clock device, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it made some good trailer footage.
It did. Great trailer footage. Great jump scare in episode 1.
It kind of feels like, oh, okay. That's that.
Yeah. And I just remember my biggest question is, I need to understand what the deal is with the bees, because there's a bee lady who had bees just spilling out of her mouth, like she was spitting out a Slurpee, like she was a Haktua spitting on that thing. Bees were just flying out of that mouth hole. And then in WandaVision, we also had the random beekeeper that came up, and he was in like the beekeeper suit and the bees were around.
I think they're unrelated.
I know that, but why do they keep putting bees? I need to know. I need to know the significance of bees in the MCU. What do bees mean? They keep appearing. It can't be a coincidence. I have a conspiracy that bees mean something.
So I have a theory.
Have meaning.
So I have a theory that is the thing that I wanted to talk about yesterday that I completely forgot to bring up. And this is the last chance to have a fun theory before the season ends.
Yeah.
I've seen this theory floating around the internet. I want your opinions on it. The theory is that the Witch's Road, as we are seeing it, is a manifestation of Billy's reality warping powers. In the similar way that Wanda created the Hex, Billy has created the Witch's Road. And the evidence that people point to for this is a lot of the trials match up with the posters and stuff in his room. So it's like based off media that he consumes. And the other big one for me is he was literally like, I need Lilia. And
she just appears.
The road pops her out.
I know. And we also have to repeat the fact that Billy has started every single one of the trials. He's always the person who starts it. This time was no exception. he picked up the first card and the sword fell. So he's like, and the hourglass tip. Another thing I would add to it is in Multiverse of Madness, when Wanda created that like orchard that was around her cabin in the woods, and it was like that fantasy orchard, it kind of a little bit reminds me of the Witch's Road, like the way that it looked. So I do wonder if
trees.
that's spooky trees, like mother like son. They can both create spooky trees. That's a family trait from the family tree, if you will. I think that that's entirely possible. I think that it's definitely possible that this could be Billy's warped reality. The only question I have about that is that hasn't Agatha been on the Witch's Road before?
So that's the thing is people are also theorizing that she hasn't, because she's not super familiar with the process of the Witch's Road. I don't know if I buy that. I think she has been on the Witch's Road. I think the details of that are a little cloudy, and that's something that we're going to see in the next 2 episodes is what exactly happened on the Witch's Road and when she went on it. Maybe she turned them into the Salem 7.
Well, she did technically, because their mothers were all the mothers that she killed.
It's more, maybe there's a more direct like
a more direct link.
Yeah.
And then we'll find out more about the Salem 7, because I would love that. I would love to find out about those bitches' backstory. I need it. I love it. I want it. More ladies, please.
So if Billy created the road, does that make him the wizard behind the curtain at the end?
So he's the wizard and
Dorothy
at the same time. The power was inside you all to go home all along, my dear. That's what the wizard says to Dorothy. So maybe, I don't know. I want there to be another wizard. I don't know. I don't feel like Billy, if he is manifesting the road, he has no idea that he's doing it. So it would be interesting to see him be the wizard at the end of it. Yeah. Like, you know what it kind of reminds me of a little tiny bit? I don't think it would be the exact same scenario, like 1 for 1. But, you know, in the D&D movie where he keeps trying to attune to the helmet, and then when he finally attunes to the helmet, it turns out that it was like himself the whole time that he had to beat. It wasn't actually his ancestor. So I wonder if that will be like kind of a reveal. Like, I was behind the road the whole time. Whoa. I think it could be fun.
Yeah, I guess the question from there is like, okay, so what's the end game of that, right?
Yeah, so what does that even mean?
What does that mean? Which I don't know. I just think it's an interesting theory.
I think it's an interesting theory too. And devil's advocate, it would make more sense to have a different person as the wizard. And part of me does kind of want that.
That's also like a thing I like, because the show is called Agatha All Along. It would be great if the reveal was, this is also all Agatha.
This is just also all Agatha. She invented the road.
Yeah, she set up the dominoes.
Hell yeah. Well, hell yeah, hell yeah.
So, pals, let us know what you think.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think in the comments. Do you guys think that Billy manifested the road? Do you think that Agatha's behind it? Do you think that we're going to get like a different big bad wizard like Mephisto or something like that? I don't know. Let us know. Let us know your Salem 7 questions. Let us know your hearts. Let us know your soul.
I think everyone this is their last chance to like make final guesses for what happens with the rest of the series. So let us know what your predictions and your wishes are for the rest of Agatha All Along. And we will see you guys very, very soon.
See you guys next week, witches. Bye.
Not even next week. Soon.